Somewhere in the scientific literature on predator behavior, there is a specific term reserved for a very small number of animals: man-eater. It is not a label given to anything that has ever harmed a human. It is reserved specifically for animals that have done something far rarer: incorporated human beings into their actual hunting pattern. Not an accident. Not a single act of self-defense. A repeated, deliberate choice to treat people as prey. Researchers studying this behavior draw a hard line between true predation and everything else. Territorial disputes, defensive attacks, mistaken identity in murky water or low light. True man-eating requires an animal to actively seek out, stalk, and kill a human as a food source, the same way it would hunt anything else in its environment. Only a handful of species on Earth have crossed that line, repeatedly with documentation solid enough to be taken seriously by the scientists who study them. Here are 8 of them. Number 8. The Nile crocodile. Across the rivers and lakes of sub-Saharan Africa, the Nile crocodile is responsible for more confirmed predatory attacks on humans than almost any other species alive. One individual crocodile in Uganda near Lake Victoria was implicated in dozens of human deaths over the course of years before it was finally captured. A single animal that had, by all available evidence, simply added humans to its regular diet. Nile crocodiles ambush from the water's edge, using exactly the same strategy they use on every other animal that comes to drink. Total stillness, total patience, and a strike that closes the distance before the prey has time to process what's happening. Once a person is in the water, the same death roll mechanics used on antelope and zebra are applied without hesitation. There is no defensive intent here. There is calculation. Number 7. The saltwater crocodile. The largest living reptile on Earth, and the only crocodilian whose range overlaps with dense human coastal populations across an entire stretch of the planet, from eastern India through Southeast Asia and into northern Australia. Unlike many large predators, the saltwater crocodile shows no documented hesitation toward humans as a category of prey. Size is the only variable that matters to it, and a fully grown adult human fits well within range. Wildlife agencies in Australia's Northern Territory have documented a consistent pattern: attacks occurring at the water's edge during a routine human activity, with no warning, no escalation, and frequently repeat behavior from the same individual crocodile returning to a productive hunting location again and again. Number 6. The polar bear. Among all bear species, the polar bear is the one researchers consistently single out as a true predator of humans, distinct from the more typically defensive behavior of grizzlies or black bears. A polar bear does not fear people the way most large land mammals do, largely because throughout its evolutionary history in the Arctic, it has had essentially no experience with humans as a threat. Documented cases describe polar bears stalking people with the same patient, low-profile approach they use on seals, closing distance slowly, using terrain and snow cover to stay hidden, and committing fully once within striking range. As Arctic ice diminishes and traditional seal hunting grounds shrink, researchers tracking human polar bear conflict have noted these encounters becoming more frequent, often involving bears that are nutritionally desperate and increasingly willing to treat a human settlement as a viable hunting ground. Number 5. The leopard. Smaller than a lion or tiger, but in some ways more dangerous specifically because of how well it is adapted to human-altered landscapes. Leopards are exceptional at moving undetected through agricultural land, forest edges, and even the outskirts of villages, and researchers studying man-eating behavior in India and Nepal have documented leopards developing sustained predatory patterns toward humans, often hunting at night, often near settlements, sometimes continuing for months before the specific animal responsible is identified and removed. Some researchers researching deep human evolutionary history have gone further, identifying leopards as among the species that preyed on early hominins long before recorded history, making the leopard, by that argument, one of the very few predators with a documented predatory relationship to our species stretching back further than civilization itself. Number 4. The tiger. No big cat has killed more documented humans through sustained, individual predatory behavior than the tiger. The most extreme single case in the historical record is the Champawat tigress, a tigress operating across Nepal and northern India in the early 20th century, believed responsible for several hundred human deaths before being tracked down and killed by hunter Jim Corbett in 1907. The highest death toll ever attributed to a single animal in recorded history. The Sundarbans mangrove forest, spanning the India-Bangladesh border, remains an active hotspot for tiger predation on humans to this day, with researchers documenting tigers there showing a distinct and unusual willingness to treat humans as standard prey, a pattern not fully explained by any single cause, though salinity-driven changes to the ecosystem and overlapping use of the same waterways by both species are frequently cited contributing factors. Number 3. The lion. The most infamous case in this entire list belongs to the lions of Tsavo. In 1898, during construction of a railway bridge in what is now Kenya, 2 adult male lions killed an estimated 130 or more railway workers over roughly 9 months, repeatedly entering the workers' camp at night to hunt. A level of boldness toward humans that halted construction entirely and required the project's chief engineer to personally track and kill both animals before work could resume. Tsavo was not an isolated case. In present-day Tanzania, researchers studying human-lion conflict have documented dozens of deaths annually in specific high-conflict regions, with conservation biologists studying the patterns, describing it as a genuine, ongoing predatory relationship. Not a series of accidents, but lions that have learned in specific places to treat humans as a viable and recurring food source. Number 2. The great white shark, alongside the bull and tiger shark. This entry comes with real scientific caveats that the others don't. Most shark bites on humans are now understood by researchers as cases of mistaken identity or investigative biting rather than true predation. A great white mistaking a surfer's silhouette for a seal from below, for instance. But a smaller number of documented attacks, particularly involving great whites, bull sharks, and tiger sharks, show behavior closer to genuine predatory intent. Sustained pursuit, repeated attacks on the same individual, and feeding behavior following the initial strike rather than a single bite and release pattern consistent with simple curiosity. Researchers studying these cases are careful not to overstate them. Sharks as a category remain far less predatory toward humans than the cultural reputation suggests. But the documented exceptions are real, and they're the reason this entry exists on a list defined by actual predatory behavior rather than popular fear. Number 1. The reticulated python. The largest snake species on Earth by length, and one of the only non-mammalian, non-reptilian ambush predators with multiple confirmed cases of fully consuming an adult human. In 2002, a 10-year-old child in South Africa was killed and consumed by a 6-meter African rock python, a close relative with comparable size and hunting strategy. Reticulated pythons specifically have been documented killing and consuming adult humans in several confirmed cases across Indonesia and the Philippines, where among the Ita people, a hunter-gatherer community living alongside the snake's range, researchers have found that roughly a quarter of men report having survived an attempted predatory attack from one at some point in their lives. Unlike most entries on this list, a python's predatory behavior toward humans isn't about hunger, desperation, or habitat loss. It's simply a function of size meeting opportunity. Once a snake reaches sufficient length, an adult human becomes, mechanically, just another item that fits within its prey range. Here is the thread that connects every animal on this list, and it's worth sitting with directly. None of them are evil. None of them are driven by anything resembling malice in the way humans understand that word. Each one is simply executing the exact same hunting strategy it has always used. Patient ambush, calculated pursuit, opportunistic size matching. Applied to a species that, for most of these animals' evolutionary history, was never part of the equation. We are recent arrivals in almost every one of these ecosystems. The crocodile, the tiger, the lion, the python. They were perfecting their methods millions of years before anything resembling a human stood at the edge of their territory. We simply became, in a small number of documented and verified cases, exactly what their methods were built to catch.